And then no one plays it. Why do you have so many good games? Just have fun.
Hi, Jason and Varun. Welcome to the club. We'll get started once we have speakers. Is he here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Our speaker is joining.
Yeah. Speaker is joined.
And I need to admit, admitted Joey.
And you, I was just like, step back and then with acting and explaining all of it, and I was like, and we all like go around my phone. It's like,
People have to say there because our the camera is pointing that way, so everyone here can see Scott. I cannot.
you can see on the screen.
I can see him on the screen, yes, but he can't see me.
You cannot. You
No.
just go there and move the camera.
It's okay. It's
So
okay.
you can, camera comes.
Let's demonstrate the camera a little bit.
Let me bring the camera.
Down, isn't this the camera?
That's the camera.
Let's move it towards you. And if we will now show,
No, you're going the other way.
sorry. Is it the other way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the thing. Is that me?
Yes.
That's me. Where's the phone? There's the phone. Let's say hello to the speaker.
Hello. You put it back.
I'm going to bring the speaker back to the audience.
Let me make a test, see if we can hear the speaker and if the speaker can share the screen and so on.
Let me stop sharing.
So more people come and.
I did the test initially. I think everyone was able to hear. I hope everybody can hear me. If you can hear me, please let me know. If you have trouble hearing, please let me know. Okay. Scott,
I can hear you.
Able to hear? Thank you. Okay, so.
Adrian, if it's appropriate, I'd like to share my screen.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay, and I'm going to place it into presentation mode. Okay.
Scott, give us a few seconds. We're trying to get the audio connected. We had that and it's quite low for everybody.
Okay, just let me know when you're ready. And you can see my first slide, okay?
Yes, we are able to see you.
How's the Max?
Oh,
Okay. The speakers are a bit off. There is a problem there. Is this better? I think the audio should be fine, but I don't know if the video. Okay, I think we can get started.
Okay, well, I'll do a quick introduction. My name is Scott Packard. I'm a program manager with Qubitekk. Qubitekk is a small firm that specializes in quantum networking, quantum information science, and production of a number of products, hardware and software that facilitate those things. We're located in San Diego County, California, and I'm very happy to be here. Happy to talk to you about the EPB Quantum Network powered by Qubitekk. I think a couple of you were in Chattanooga last week and had the had the benefit of seeing it firsthand. And we have had quite a resounding accolades from that that tour, that review, and we're quite pleased with partnering with EPB and the efforts to date with this network. I'm going to give an overview. I'm going to talk in general terms about quantum networks, and then I'll talk specifically about what EPB has put in place in Chattanooga, Tennessee. First of all, EPB is a public utility, public broadband provider that took a kind of a quantum leap, so to speak, on installing a quantum network. They partnered with Qubitekk on a Department of Energy project to use quantum technology to secure SCADA networks. SCADA networks are those networks that are used to command and control utilities. From that initial Department of Energy project, EPB then took what is really a significant risk, a significant visionary step in partnering with Qubitekk to install this commercial network. So I definitely want to give accolades to EPB for their vision in advancing not so much the state of technology, but the accessibility and the potential for access to quantum networks. So unless there are any questions about anything I've said, I'm going to jump right in. And since I'm seeing basically my screens, you do have to pipe up to let me know that you got a question. So is there a question?
Not yet, Scott. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, so I'm going to cover, what is a commercial quantum network and why is that different than a quantum networking testbed. Give you a introduction overview of the EPB Quantum Network, and then talk to some of the things, the technologies that will facilitate deeper expression, deeper realization of quantum networking capability, and really, quantum networks, small networks as a precursor to the quantum internet. So when I'm talking about a quantum network, I'm talking about a means of distributing photonic qubits. Qubits are quantum bits. They're the smallest particles. They exhibit unusual characteristics that we don't observe in the typical physical world, but they enable us to do certain things. Things like have bits of information share states even though they are separated by great distances. So quantum networks allow you to distribute those photonic qubits and share quantum states. For the most part, commercial quantum networks are built using terrestrial fiber optic cable. These are what you think of for fiber optic cable and broadband or big internet pipes sharing classical IT and telecommunications. Those are the same sort of networks that are used in commercial quantum networks. A little bit different application, which I'll talk to a little bit later. With a commercial quantum network, we see this as owned and maintained by telecom utilities that have large infrastructure of that fiber optic cable. Why is that? Fiber optic cable is expensive, and it's very expensive to put underground. It requires trenching, it requires right-of-way, it often requires having environmental impact assessments done. So it is not a small undertaking. And oftentimes built with commercially available hardware, entangled photon sources, single photon counting modules, and fiber optic switches, similar, although adapted from those that are used in traditional fiber optic classical networks. When I use the term classical, I do want to explain a little bit. Classical networks, when I use that term, I'm differentiating from those networks that are used in quantum networking, in that they're what you would traditionally see for information technology systems and fiber optic, like your access to the internet, the data sharing that we do with classical computers. Okay. So this is obviously not the first network that shares or passes around photonic qubits, right? However, it's differentiated from the test beds that are in place at the esteemed institutions like Chicago Quantum Exchange in Chicago under Paul QuTE. And others. It's different from University of Arizona's Center for Quantum Networks. It's different from Brookhaven in that it is it's about application discovery and market creation. It is, although the primary customer is industry, it's also going to be available to academia. It's going to be available to small businesses, large businesses, and it's a for-profit endeavor. A lot of the other test beds that you may be familiar with are funded in large part through federal funding. They are predominantly focused on R&D for either institutes of higher education or national laboratories. And they are a bit cloistered. You might get access to them, but that's going to be a rare instance. In this case, the commercial quantum network is going to be essentially available to anyone who meets thresholds for the pricing that's the owner is setting, and that's certainly the case at EPB Quantum Network. So, talking more specifically about what's in place in Chattanooga, as I mentioned, this was kind of the culmination of a long-term relationship between EPB and Qubitekk that was fostered through a project funded by the Department of Education in a project that was worked with Oak Ridge National Labs and a couple other national labs. This network is specifically designed to be reconfigurable. I'll talk in more detail about that, but essentially it's software defined and can be configured to meet a user's specific requirements. The network hardware and software is provided by a number of different vendors. Qubitekk predominantly provided the quantum entangled photon sources. Dicon Fiber Optics provided some optical switching. Quantum Opus provided superconducting nanowire single photon detectors for the network. And then Aliro was just recently selected to provide the control plane software. Control plane software will be the software that allows a user to dynamically reconfigure the network. It will set pathways, it will control the switches, it will allocate time on the network to a user lab, and I'll explain the difference between equipment hubs, user labs, and then the control center. Began this deployment almost a year and a half ago with a planned full operational capability in July of 2023. Folks who had the opportunity to be in Chattanooga last week, saw the what was initial operating capability with all hardware connected, configured, and operating. The final steps will be the deployment of Aliro's control plane software, some testing and evaluation to ensure we're getting the functionality that we're looking for in advance of that full launch in July. Okay, so I'm going to cover the architecture that is in place in EPB Quantum Network. We think that this architecture is a pretty good benchmark, a pretty good model for a commercial quantum network. It's comprised of three components, and I'll cover these each in greater detail. The first component is an equipment hub. Think of this as the heart of your quantum network. I'll next talk to the quantum nodes or user labs. Think of these as the hands that are manipulating the experiments or the demonstration or the application that a individual user wants to work with. And then the control center, which you can think of as the brain that actually does the configuration, the software defined configuration of EPB Quantum Network. Okay, let's take a deeper dive. Okay, this is currently, what's currently in place is Equipment Hub A at Broad Street. Adrian, this is the space that you walk through. It's co-located with EPB's headquarters, and it incorporates an equipment hub, 3 user nodes or quantum nodes, and the control center. So first of all, the equipment hubs. And I will tell you, even though you're seeing kind of a multicolored rainbow display of the equipment there on the left side of the page, the picture doesn't quite do it justice. It is quite an impressive laydown of equipment, and it's quite visually striking. Now, the equipment hub is really comprised of 4 components. First of all, there's the quantum sources. These are the entangled photon sources. They could be single photon sources if a user preferred. In the instance of this network, we have for each equipment hub 4 entangled photon sources. Again, these are Qubitekks, quantum entangled sources in 1570 nanometer wavelength. That's what you can think of as a telecom wavelength. Then there are the quantum detectors. These are in this instance, the superconducting nanowire single photon detectors that allow you to detect those occurrences, the coincidental or entangled instances of photons. One of the critical elements of a quantum network is the ability to control coherence, to ensure stability of your quantum bits. Coherence control and polarization are key elements to maintaining the integrity and stability of the quantum network. And then that 4th element are the electronics and software that allow you to control the timing of your network, and to control your polarization and correct for polarization inside of fiber. Those of you that are probably and my apologies, I do not know the audience makeup, so this is not intended to be pedantic or talking down, but just my ignorance of the audience. Give me one second. So the the fiber optical cable will expand and contract based on temperature or movement in the earth, and it will also twist, and that twist introduces changes in the polarization of the fiber optic cable. Well, you need to correct for that so that you maintain the correct orientation of your qubits, since we're using polarization entanglement. Okay, continuing on, I think. Okay, so what does an equipment hub consist of? First of all, it is a pretty complex piece of gear. I mentioned already that we had 4 qubit sources. You can see those here in module A. Those qubit sources are essentially your initial entangled photons. Remember how I said this network was reconfigurable? One of the mechanisms for doing that is the prepare modules. The prepare modules allow a user to decide between time binned, heralded, or pure entangled qubits. The various, I'm not going to get into the various utility of one versus the other, but this configurability allows a variety of quantum computing, quantum sensing, and quantum communication users to determine what variety of entangled qubits are best for them. The prepare modules are connected to a 20 by 20 fiber optic switch. I'll get in a little bit later. From there, the qubits would be prepared for measurement by your SNSPD, your superconducting nanowire single photon detector. And key components of that are the automatic polarization control and the timing control module. Now, if you look at this, the kind of the cartoon in the upper left corner, you can see that there's a primary link, a secondary link, and a LAN link. So the primary link is your primary channel that you would communicate through. And I do not know, are you seeing the full 60 by 60 switch, or are you seeing move that out of the way? So that is the primary link is essentially your primary means of communicating to the various user nodes. This is where, once you've the entangled photons, the information that you would derive from measuring those, the primary links would send that information to the quantum nodes or the user labs. There's a secondary link as a backstop to the primary, and then the LAN link is the mechanism for passing timing information and adjusting for sending a signal to adjust for polarization control. And that's a classical channel differentiated from the two quantum links here. The primary and secondary are quantum links. The LAN link, that's a classical IT link. Remember how I said that 20 by 20 switch that's here? So at the top, you'd have your photon sources. In between, setting the preparation, selecting time binned, heralded, or pure entangled photons in that prepare module, and then selecting the pathway from the prepare modules to the measuring modules is handled by this 20 by 20 switch. Excuse me. This switch also is the mechanism by which you would communicate to user labs. You can see there's a primary link to the west and a primary link to the east. That establishes this equipment hub as a true network, because you can connect to user nodes that are in in this instance, the eastern part of Chattanooga or the western part of Chattanooga. Again, your preparation for measurement and then your single photon detectors in the measurement portion of the switch. Okay, so moving from an equipment hub to a user node or quantum node. These are where a individual subscriber, a company, a researcher would set up, connect their equipment, excuse me a second, would connect their equipment to the network and conduct their experiments, try out their applications, work through whatever objective they had. The key mechanism for doing this is a standardized quantum network interface console. This is where a company would plug in their equipment, where you would bring your whether it's an outside photon source, whether it's a detector, whether it's software, and would connect into the network interface. You can think of this as very similar to a standard NIC card for classical networking. It provides the ability to input or output qubits, to control timing synchronization, as well as it provides an opportunity to connect classical computers, classical communications tools to your portion of the network. Each equipment hub is connected to 5 quantum nodes or user labs. And then from the user lab, you would communicate to the control center to configure the network for your particular requirements. Things like selecting whether you want time binned or heralded photons, what basis you want to measure. Do you want to measure in 2 bases, 4 bases of polarization? That is all selected here via a communications channel to the control center. A little bit deeper on the interface. So that quantum network interface console will have standard input mechanisms. Those are FCPC fiber connectors, that's serial ports, a USB connector. Adrian, I'm assuming you saw that panel during the walkthrough with Patrick and Jason's overview, where they talked about the quantum physical layer connectivity, the standard mechanisms for plugging your equipment into the network. That input-output interface will be, pretty much standardized. And one of the things we expect from users coming in is to identify additional physical layer connectivity requirements that users would like to see. But initially, FCPC fiber connectors, a couple serial ports, and a USB port are built into that interface. From that quantum node, all inputs and outputs would come through the equipment hubs. So who do we envision using this? Well, initially, developers that are working to refine their hardware and software, whether that's quantum memories, entangled photon sources, single photon sources, frequency converters to go from telecom wavelengths to free space wavelengths, software users that are running simulations and network optimization software, control plane software developers like Aliro, Zapata, Keysight, and network protocols. Eventually, you'll see end users that are looking to access the network as a means to process information. This would be after you had established a quantum computer that users could access to run quantum algorithms for various things, whether it's Monte Carlo simulations, weather simulations, those stochastic computations that quantum computers are expected to do better than classical computers. So, as I mentioned earlier, the control center. The control center will be manned 24/7, 365 by EPB employees. It will be the means by which EPB monitors the health and functioning of the network. They will also be the location where they configure the network for individual users. User will say, hey, I'd like this configuration. Just a little bit of math based on the number of components in the network. There are about 192 configurations of the network. Now, do we anticipate that all 192 will be supremely useful? No, probably a quarter of that will be what most people are looking for. But that 192 permutations should give you an idea of the fungibility and the adaptability of the EPB Quantum Network to meet the needs of users, regardless of what application, what piece of hardware, what software. And as we discovered with the internet and connecting classical computers, who knows what users will uncover as they employ and they deploy their equipment and deploy it on the EPB Quantum Network. Really, sky is the limit. EPB is providing the tabula rasa, the blank slate for users to come in and find the utility in their equipment and in this network. So I don't want to go too deeply in this. This is just kind of an initial idea for EPB's network configuration, how they anticipate using it. So from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., configurable for a tier 1 customer. This would be, your large industry folks that are pushing large amounts of data, are bringing complex hardware, running large-scale simulations, large companies, national labs. Tier 2, small companies, universities, and then tier 3, not exactly the best time of the day, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. But I know quite a few people who do their best work at that time of day. And this is where you'd see kind of standard applications, set up networks, not necessarily being specifically reconfigured, but would be also the time when maintenance would be conducted on the network. So the kind of the shaded out gray map is the downtown area of Chattanooga. The center green star is the Broad Street equipment hub with the quantum nodes at co-located with the EPB headquarters. That's the bank, the rainbow bank of quantum equipment that you saw at the equipment hub. One of the critical components that it's easy to overlook is the optical fiber that connects these nodes. As I said earlier, it's no small thing to run optical fiber. It's the optical fiber itself is expensive, but putting it in the ground takes both specialized labor and trenching capability, and then splicing and mateable connectors in order to ensure you have ultra low loss infrastructure, ultra low loss connections between your quantum nodes is critical. unlike a classical broadband or optical fiber network, where if you're not getting signal at your receiving end, you just turn up the power. Quantum network doesn't have that that functionality inherent. You have a very faint quantum signal, individual photons, 2 femtowatts of power in your signal. So it's crucial that your fiber infrastructure be of the highest caliber and the lowest loss of signal. We are anticipating expanding from that Broad Street. There's already a quantum node at the Edney building, where you see the silver star due south of EP Quantum Network, EPB's headquarters, with expansion already planned into the vicinity of University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. So some of the use cases that you could anticipate: networking of quantum sensors, sensing applications, distributed quantum computing applications, testing of quantum protection for cybersecurity or secure network applications, artificial intelligence and machine learning, simulation modeling and training in quantum network, and then individual, small businesses bringing their quantum devices and plugging it into the network and having access to high quality photonic qubits. Okay, I am not going to go deep into BBM 92. So where do we see the evolution of commercial quantum networks? If you look at that base layer of the pyramid, that's where we are today. We're able to measure state tomography. We can share entangled and heralded qubits. We have control plane software. Those SNSPDs are high efficiency single photon detectors. You can connect and link with classical networks. All of these components on the bottom are existing technology, hardware and software that are being employed today in the EPB Quantum Network. As you move up the stack in the pyramid to the ultimate capability of a hybrid quantum computer, all these other components, mostly hardware, whether it's on-demand, deterministic single photon sources, boosted Bell state measurement modules, quantum repeaters. These are all technologies that are needed to get us to that full capability of a hybrid quantum network. And by hybrid, I mean the integration of classical IT networks with full-scale functioning quantum computer networks, so that you get the benefits of both types of computing capability. 3 to 5 years. The running joke is, the metaverse is 10 years away and always will be. These are some nutty, real hard technology challenges. Some of them are real hard engineering challenges. Others are fundamental research that maybe you'll undertake there in Indiana. So we see these as critical components to maximizing, to fully realizing the potential of quantum networks. Not just commercial quantum networks, but all quantum networks. So covered the EPB Quantum Network in some detail. We think that quantum networks are going to be critical infrastructure for taking the United States, our allies, the academia into the future with realizing quantum capability, quantum computing, quantum sensing, and quantum communications. This first commercial quantum network is what we hope to be one of many as this is fielded and others have seen it. We certainly hope that other communities, other utilities, other state and federal governments will be inspired to duplicate this in other locations. We think that access to these commercial quantum networks will facilitate and accelerate the development of quantum networking hardware and software. And of course, if you'd like to learn more, quantum.epb.com for kind of a deeper dive. There's a little bit of a big wow at that website, but you can take a deeper dive. So I am not Dr. Duncan Earl, but this was put together by our Chief Technology Officer. And if you have specific questions, you can reach out to him. If you have some general questions, because folks, I am not a quantum physicist, and I do not play one on TV, but I will give it a go at answering your questions.
We can ask questions now. Protocol, can you hear us?
Scott, are you able to hear us?
I can hear you quite well, Adrian. The person who asked that question was a bit faint. So if someone wants to interpret or go ahead and ask it, I can't hear it all.
Okay.
That's good. Is this better?
I can hear you. Yes.
Perfect. Sean, can you go ahead? Sean has a question. Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, me? Oh, okay, cool. So I didn't know who was talking. Okay. Scott, thanks for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. So you mentioned something previously. You said you weren't gonna go into the details of BB92. I'm currently working on an optical table setup for E4 protocol that I'm working on. So I was wondering if you would be able to just speak very briefly about why you guys are using BB92 visa reverse BB82 or some of the other cryptographic schemes.
Yeah, so
QKD.
Yeah, BB84, kind of the initial laydown for entangled, entangled polarization based photonic sharing that derives a cryptographic key. What is it? BB or E91, Eckert 91, and then BBM. The two BBs of BB84, 92. We have a significant portfolio of IPs surrounding BBM 92. It is kind of fenced off for our use. BBM 92 kind of simplifies. You're only measuring in horizontal and vertical bases in order to derive cryptographic keys, but you have as a feature of that cryptographic key derivation is the essential entanglement of photons. It's not pure entanglement like you'd have with some of the other modalities, but it provides a means of sharing entangled photons for quantum teleportation. And we think that's a critical component to linking quantum processors, quantum sensors, and for the internal communications in a multi-core quantum computer. As you know, inherently unstable. The more qubits you stuck in close proximity, the faster they want to decohere. So photonic qubits really the mechanism for networking. to get into the deeper benefits of BB84 versus Eckert 91 versus BBM 92 is above my pay grade. There's probably a paper you can read, and I probably have it. But
I'm sure there is. Awesome. Thank you for the answer. I really appreciate it. I understand that getting into technicalities of those kinds of things is a little sticky. So thank you very much.
So
Appreciate it.
here's the second question. When we went to Chattanooga, first of all, I'd like to get an idea for the audience how big the network is. It seems that it is about the size of Chattanooga, correct?
yeah, it mostly, we call it metropolitan scale, right? Chattanooga is about 800,000 people. It's a small or medium-sized city. We're not talking Los Angeles size metropolitan. We're not talking Chicago. We're talking smaller. So 5 to 7 kilometers if you went the farthest distance with that network is what we're talking about.
So we have local area networks and wide area networks, and then we have the internet, and this is basically in between. Now, Duncan kept saying, and everybody was saying, this is a commercial network. It's based on commercial entities, things that you can purchase. How exactly are you functioning without commercial quantum repeaters, which don't exist? And I think Duncan said we don't need them. Is that true? And can you describe a little bit what is a quantum memory, and if you have any, and how they participate in the network?
Yeah, so I mean, to really kind of get at the elephant that you're kind of you throw out there. So a quantum repeater is at this point a theoretical device that allows you to take a quantum state and clone it.
Amplify.
To repeat it. Say, okay, I got a quantum state, and I can take that quantum state and I can duplicate it. I can pass it on. Well, there's this whole theorem, no cloning theorem, right? Heisenberg's uncertainty. If I look at it, if I measure it, I've just changed the state. So there's some fundamental physics that we have to figure out our way around with a quantum repeater. So folks are I think it's I can't remember if it's Harvard or MIT had recently got making some progress, but there are no quantum repeaters. There are quantum memories. And what is a quantum memory? Quantum memory, there are varieties of it, but basically what a quantum memory does is it allows you to hold on to a quantum state for what in the quantum world is a long time, microseconds by nanoseconds, which, and I think in some instances up to 10 seconds, but don't quote me on that, where you can hold a quantum state in a cesium or rubidium or diamond cavity matrix, these various quantum materials that allow you to hold on to that state. And that's useful for things like transduction, which is taking quantum information in one modality and changing it to another. Again, remember, I know that's an ugly overgeneralization, but again, remember, I'm a liberal arts, so give me some slack. But it allows you to share that quantum information across different modalities. There are a couple companies that say they have commercial quantum memories. They are not connected to the network. They are not part of the inherent hardware on the network. Why is that? Well, until somebody brings a device that requires transduction or requires that holding on to that quantum state for a period of time, we're going to generate the quantum states and we're going to use the quantum states. And the other thing is, because the distance is, why do you need a quantum repeater? Why do you need to take a quantum state and then pass it along? Well, because attenuation of the signal over distance. In quantum networks, the tyranny of distance is incredibly oppressive because you're sending such a faint, remember I said 2 femtowatts. What's a femtowatt? That's 10 to the minus 26th of a watt or something like that. It's such a faint signal that every little bit of that, any photons that you lose through the cladding of your fiber optic cable or decohere because of polarization shifts, is a loss of loss potential to carry information. So if you start off with 100,000 photons that you're generating per second, by the time you get out to 70, 80 kilometers, you're left with, maybe 100 photons per second, maybe even less. That reduces. Remember, a qubit is that individual. It's the equivalent of a classic bit. It's what carries your quantum information. Where you have gigabytes in classical networks, if you're only getting 100 bits, that constrains the amount of information you can share.
But this is an impressive proof of engineering. So first of all, the numbers are much better than they were 10 years ago. That's one thing. Second, the network is fairly small, so you don't need repeaters, you don't need memories yet. There are no commercial devices, but I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow we had one, because they are active topics of research. And like you said, lots of universities have a lot of prototypes. People in Holland are completely sure that they can come up with one tomorrow. So the reason I asked is because we talked to Duncan during the presentation at some point, and think about this, all qubits are stationary, except photons, which are called flying qubits. And you're going to capture a qubit, a flying qubit, and hold on to it for 10 seconds. So that's impressive, because the photon is wants to get away and moves very fast. What I asked is this, are you changed the modality? And Duncan said, no, not yet, meaning you could have a trapped ion and say, I'm going to capture the photon by actually entangling it somehow with a trapped ion. And in the node, I keep that information in the ion. So he said no. So my question is this. So first of all, IonQ, Chris Monroe kept saying that he always thought his company is going to be a software company. Because once you have a module that has a bunch of qubits, he's just going to use software to combine them in a supercomputer with all these qubits. So a local network in this room of devices that have qubits that I can put more qubits into is quite useful. And then it would be even better if I can do it over a large area, like in the case of your network.
Yeah.
But do I need to have the same modality computers, like I have to bring computers from Xanadu or from PsiQuantum, or can I interface to your network a superconducting qubit, or one from atom computing, or from cold quanta? In other words, different modalities than the modality you use through the network. Can I use the network to interface those devices? Yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. That is where, as I understand it, the functionality of a quantum memory will allow you to change modality from photonic gate, superconducting, trapped ion into a photonic qubit, and then transmit. One of the unique capabilities, and you talked to it, is a photonic qubit can be passed through terrestrial fiber optic. That's not the case with a trapped ion. Trapped ion is not going anywhere through a fiber optic, right? So, but you're still constrained by distance. However, if the key mechanism for connecting small, fairly stable, coherent processors is that photonic interconnect, that really will be could potentially be one of the mechanisms to scale, to go from 12. I think IBM says they have 127 qubits or something like that in there, which I would note that 3 companies that use the same type of quantum computing approach just delisted because their investors do not think that the technology is viable. But obviously, hey, I'm not arguing with IBM. I'm just saying. They have 60 some of these computers or something, and they've sold I don't know, 5 or 6 of them at 100 million a pop. So IBM knows something. But D-Wave and a couple others, they've gone out of business because they were delisted from their stock exchange.
So this is extremely important because Qubitekk is a small company, it has 30 employees. And yet they managed to put this together. This is an actual network, it exists. It's for people who will pay to do something. You have to realize this is the bottom layer, exactly as Scott explained at the beginning. Think about the computers we use today. All of them have an operating system. None of the computers that we call quantum computers have any operating system. Likewise, the software for the network, it's not there yet. So we are where we are. It's amazing that this layer exists. There are some limitations, but the promise is even bigger. And this is basically what we have heard today, and we've seen it over there on site in Chattanooga.
And you know who's going to fill those gaps?
They use us.
You guys are.
Yeah,
You guys are going to fill those gaps. You're going to write the operating systems. You're going to be the Bill Gates, and I mean that in the best way. Bill Gates quantum operating system, and you will fill these gaps in the technology. The field is so nascent that as your professor said, a small company with knuckle draggers like me. I mean, we've got real smart quantum physicists. I'm just filling in for Duncan, but we'll be the ones who take this technology, the creative destruction, finding the path forward. Sean, I saw you had your hand up, or maybe you still have your hand up.
Yes, no, he raised it.
No, I appreciate it. I'm sorry for hogging so much question time. With it being as nascent as you say it is, would you have any input for graduate students such as myself studying quantum computing on how to get into industry, or those interested in quantum computing get into industry from post graduation?
I will tell you that the industry is so starved for talent, and not just quantum physicists. I mean, every one of your professors could walk into a company making 3 or 4 times what they make as a professor. So it talks to their dedication to the state of the art and also the teaching. But the industry is so starved for talent, and a lot of this technology is export controlled. So companies that do work with the federal government and national labs are constrained by who they can hire. There is the Quantum Economic Development Consortium is kind of a collection of big and small quantum companies. The quantum hubs that are funded through the National Science Foundation, the Department of Energy puts a lot of funding into quantum technology. I would start looking QEDC as far as who's who in this industry. And I mean, if you've got a great idea, it can be very daunting to be an entrepreneur in this space, but the majority of the small companies are transition from an academic setting, folks who working either in engineering or physics, who have taken their research and determined what the commercial application of it is. If you have any familiarity with quantum computing, quantum sensing, or quantum communications, you will have no difficulty whatsoever in finding a job in the U.S. In places as varied as DC, Boston, Chicago, Southern California, Arizona. I could go on. There's no shortage. Those are kind of the concentrating areas, but that's not those are not the only big quantum hubs. It's where some of the federal money is concentrating. So does that answer your question, Sean?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Yeah, send me a resume.
You know what?
I'm
Okay,
kidding.
yeah.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Kind of.
Sorry.
I'm not, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. So there's talks amongst the I guess the quantum people of a supposed quantum winter approaching, or that we're in the works of it. How are you going to deal with that? Or
Yeah. So actually that talk originated as long as 2 years ago. They were talking about a quantum winter, and one of the things, anytime you have technology that's dependent on venture capital, and you have things like Silicon Valley Bank going under, right? You know, it can be it can constrain the environment, the larger environment. You know, like any capitalist venture, you are certainly constrained by the vagaries of the economic conditions. We thought with the pandemic shutting down acquisition of chips, pump lasers, detectors, the crystals, the fiber optic connectors, that we were dead in the water. You find a way, though. You find a way. So there are a lot of companies that are in the environment right now that will not make it across, you know, if you do any study of entrepreneurship and this step from small company to big company, there's what they call the canyon, valley of death, the canyon of despair, whatever, where you have to go from, you know, hey, you're hunting and killing it as you go, to scaling your operations to where you have a commercial product that you can sell. But you know, I mean, when did the term metaverse get coined? 1983 with Stephen Donaldson in Cryptomicon, right? So we're gonna have a metaverse, and here we are, you know, 50 years, 40 some odd years later, and we might be seeing it. AI, machine learning. These are technologies that you know, a lot of hype, and then some actual real development. Anybody who's played with Chat GPT is starting to see, you know, functional day-to-day utility of you know, if you as an individual user of AI machine learning. I think that you now have the federal government in 2018. You had the White House kind of started to get cohesive in our federal approach to quantum technology. Mostly that was in response to scares from you know, quantum computing cracking your traditional cryptography, but it was also more broader in what's the promise of quantum sensing, quantum computing, and other quantum technologies. And so the federal government is starting to put real money. Is it the same kind of money that the Chinese are putting? No, not yet. But it is, you are starting to see federal money. The federal government is, you know, is really kind of a big helper when it comes to getting small companies, you know, getting bright ideas, you know, through small business SIBRs and STTRs to National Science Foundation to carry them along. And now that they are focusing on quantum technology in a more cohesive, I won't say quite cohesive, but a more cohesive way. I think the promise of handling, they provided you a winter code for that quantum winter, so that you can make it to spring. I don't think we're, the doomsday of quantum winter will be as bad, but then again, the hype of quantum technology isn't quite, everybody's saying, I've got the great widget. So long-winded answer to your question. As you can see, you don't just need physicists and engineers, you also need business folks, program managers, ethicists, lawyers, people to think how we're going to use and employ quantum technology in an ethical way. Liberal arts. It's not what I do here, but there is an ecosystem that needs to be developed to take full advantage of quantum technology. It's not just physicists. So if you think, hey, it's not for me, I'm really bad at math. The upside is quantum math is different. So that's a bright side. But there are other ways you can get into quantum, the quantum ecosystem. So again, long-winded answer to your question.
Anybody else in the room with questions?
I have a question.
Okay, good.
So you mentioned that there is a problem with the signal strength. The signal strength that you're working with is in femtowatts and it's quite low. I wanted to know if you have worked into, or are you currently working towards maybe modulating it, because you can splice it with carrier signals and really improve the strength. That's my question.
Yeah, so there are some challenges. I mean, one of the things people say, well, is, hey, the signal's really weak. Why not turn up the laser, right? So one of the things you want, you remember how I said one of the technology we look into is on-demand qubits, deterministic, so that I say, hey, I just send one photon and I know which photon that is, and I receive one photon. To deterministic single photons are kind of a thing to be developed, to be had. So that's the more photons you pump out, the less you're able to say, oh, that's the photon that I wanted. So there's a combination of you want low signal strength. The signal naturally attenuates. You lose photons through, if you're familiar with how light moves through a fiber optic cable, again, I don't mean to be pedantic, but it bounces back and forth, right? And it will bounce right through your instead of bouncing back, it'll continue on. So there's a photon I just lost. This bouncing also has some characteristics of dispersion that if I wanted to do things like wavelength multiplexing, say I want to put a bunch of quantum signals into a single fiber cable, you start to get things like, and we can't go too deep here, Raman scattering and other aspects of dispersion and signal loss that start to interfere with each other. So one of the ideas out there is, hey, I'm gonna do dense wavelength division multiplexing like we use with classical, and I'm just going to put a bunch of different wavelengths, 1310, 1550, down the same pipe. Well, your different wavelengths will start to interfere with each other. When you have high-powered classical wavelengths, we have mechanisms for sorting out the noise that comes out at the end. You get your main signal, but there's a lot of noise with that dispersion and that interference. And you use in classical IT, you use tools to take that, to basically differentiate your signal from your noise. When your quantum signal is so faint, doing that becomes much more difficult. So they look at time division, multiplexing, you know, send a signal, send another signal, send another signal, and differentiate by time. But that reduces the amount of information you can put through, because you have a period when you're not sending information, as opposed to things like coarse or dense wavelength division multiplexing. You are starting to get into things like Fourier transform and Raman scattering and other forms of dispersion that exceed my technical knowledge. But there are reasons why the limits exist, and the technology is still not to where we can take full advantage of that. And any more technical of an explanation, I'm going to have to defer to Adrian. And if I misspoke, Adrian, I'm sure you'll correct it in lecture.
So any other questions for perspective? Is there like a specific quality of fiber that you need, like OM, like it's OM4, OM5?
Yeah, so the fiber that's in place in EPB Quantum Network with telecom wavelengths, we're using single mode fiber. There are, if you're working in other wavelengths, for example, we have an 810 nanometer wavelength entangled photon source that we predominantly use for free space. But when you want to put it into fiber, say you got a short run, you want to run it through fiber, we will often use polarization maintaining fiber. Very expensive, only for short runs. The fiber on the inside of our entangled photon source is polarization maintaining. With automatic polarization control, you can adjust for that over short distances with single mode fiber. You have less, the 1570 nanometer entangled photon sources that are on the EPB quantum network. They work fine over medium distances with single mode fiber. There's multi-mode for fiber. There's multi-core fiber that is being tested out. And then there are things like ultra low loss, like 0.016 dB of signal loss over a kilometer. The more special your fiber gets, the curve of expense goes up, exponentially, not linearly. So the more your specialized fiber is in your network, the higher your cost. Cost is part of your engineering solution. So that was one of the reasons to use single mode fiber, telecom fiber, and it was a big part of the decision for EPB to be the partner with doing this. They have facility with fiber. They have dark fiber. That's something else I forgot to mention. If you're passing a quantum signal through fiber, you can't have any electro-optical switching over. It has to maintain a continuous line, and when they use the term dark, they mean you're not running anything else through that. Now, I talked a little bit of danced around multiplexing, but for now, you want a nice, clean, pristine, as few splices, as few switches, as few mateable connectors in between your signal and your receiver. And you cannot have, you can't push it through a Cisco router. You have a Cisco router on the outsides of it that you can use the information once it's received and measured, but you can't have a router or an electro-optical switch or anything. You have an pure optical switch But that's it. You can't, classical network, we take light pulses, turn them into an electrical signal, and then turn them back into a light pulse and send it on its way. Can't do that with a quantum network. Not yet anyways. Remember that quantum repeater? Quantum repeater? We don't have any of those yet. But for now, yeah. That answer your question?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I threw a lot of extra stuff in there.
There are no questions. We should stop, but are there any more questions?
Any more questions?
Yeah, hopefully you'll get to see it. It's a lot more impressive than my layperson explanation of it. It does represent something that's accessible that is not necessarily the case in some of the other test beds that are, New York, Chicago, Tucson. So
Thank you so much for coming here tonight and talking to us.
Yes. Thank you so much.
sorry I couldn't be there in person.
That's okay. Next time we get.
So that's.
Thanks for your patience. Thanks for the opportunity to talk a little bit about EPB Quantum Network. We're very, very proud of it. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into it, and yeah, I think it certainly has a lot of potential for the development of quantum technology for folks who are interested in pushing the envelope with the technology. So.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks, Scott, appreciate it.
Take care.
So I'm gonna stop recording.